everyone. This is the Geospatial Index again. Very happy to have Luke on, the CEO of Skyfi, an Earth observation company in the States. So Luke, without further ado, could we hear the elevator pitch for Skyfi?
Yeah, first, Will, thanks for having me on. Super excited to talk to you. I think we'll get into a lot of super fun stuff. But yeah, at Skyfi, we're an Earth observation marketplace company. Our mission is to easify the access to Earth observation data and imagery for the whole world. We take a partnership approach. So we partner with satellite companies, drone companies, airplane companies, balloon companies, and analytic companies, and pair that together with a very beautiful user interface, user experience that allows people to understand this amazing technology flying overhead. And so that's what we do.
Sure. Okay. So my next question is about the niche that you dominate. I'm interested to know a bit more about that, given that you said it's a global marketplace.
Yeah. It's a good question, because I think, when you say the word niche, a lot of people think about like, what narrow vertical are we solving for? And I think, as we looked across the industry when we started Skyfi, we found that was kind of some of the faults in the industry. So, when I say we have a global presence or a global marketplace, I truly mean that. Since Skyfi launched our first initial product offering January 17th of 2023, we went viral. So we're in 185 countries of the world, hundreds of thousands of user sessions, tens of thousands of individual accounts created, for this thesis that, people don't want to solve or use a platform that solves one little vertical. We want to solve it all. And, with that, on the partnership approach, we partner with various different types of sensor operators, and satellites, drone, balloon, airplane, like I said, and then the analytic companies is what we're integrated as we speak. But with that allows us to solve for the masses, where let's say you're an electro-optical satellite company, where you're going to solve electro-optical satellite problems for that consumer base. And then if you're a hyperspectral company, you're going to solve for people that understand hyperspectral. And by the fact that we partner with everyone, it's a much more diverse offering for folks. And so when we look at our customer base, we see a wide variety. And I don't exaggerate when I say we hear almost a different use case every day in what we're solving for. So we have everyone from just curious people that want to see a transparent view into the Earth from their bedroom while they're drinking their morning coffee, to business professionals that are in agriculture, insurance, real estate, mining, you name it, and then some defense as well. So we're seeing this thesis come to life where it's about the easification, word that we like to use instead of democratization. I think a lot of people they hear democratization, it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other, but easifying it, much in the way where before Uber existed in the world, could you get a taxi ride? Yeah, absolutely. But it was super painful. You didn't know the price. You didn't know like the timing. You had to talk to a person on the phone, like, hey, I'm the guy in the purple shirt on the corner. You get in, you have to explain directions. Well, Uber came and made it all easier and expanded this whole market. So it's the same thing we're doing in that parallel. Is we're opening up this market to people that haven't had access. So the niche aspect is we're actually counter to that. We want to solve for all of these use cases, and it's very possible with what we're doing.
You sound ambitious. I'm reminded of a recent podcast with Aravind. I think it's the TerraWatch Space podcast.
Yeah.
And there was a Slovenian guest he had on. I'm terribly sorry, I've forgotten his name, but he said that what you guys are trying to do, partner with all of the imagery providers and have a global offering, is really hard. And he said, maybe it was Mind Behind Maps. Sorry. I think it was Mind Behind Maps. That the guy who runs that has a Earth observation background. And I think he said at the beginning of his career, he was told by his boss to avoid doing what you're trying to do. Okay.
I can expand on that if you'd like. I think a large part of the industry, and Aravind and the TerraWatch, a really good friend of Skyfi, really appreciate his his viewpoints. Myself and the other co-founder of Skyfi, Bill Perkins, we were on his podcast a while back, and very, very good. And we preface it with like, this is probably going to be the least geospatial oriented podcast that Arvin does, because Bill and I are not geospatial people. We don't have GIS backgrounds. And to that point, why I think it's been very hard, and we've seen companies fail that have tried to do this in the past with a partnership approach, is it is very difficult. You have to understand the partnerships, the agreement, the business models, but more importantly, you have to understand what the customers want. What are their pain points? How are you solving for that? Because it's not about the latest greatest resolution or widget on a satellite, or like, people don't care about that. They just want their answers solved or their questions solved to get the answers and move on. And so we built this team at Skyfi. 99% of us don't come from the geospatial world. We come from trying to solve these pain points. And that has served us well, where we're coming from Uber. I spent years at Uber. I had a product was at Uber. CTO was at Uber. Most of my software engineers are at Uber, and big tech companies that understand building products for millions of people, not solving, problems for a couple hundred customers for it. So yeah, I love the aspect of everyone. Every time somebody tells me like, oh, this has been tried before and it's hard, I'm like, yeah, but we're actually looking at it from a different viewpoint, and we're not coming from this biased view of building geospatial tools by geospatial people. We are non-geospatial people, integrating this technology for the masses.
Yeah, sure. Interesting you mentioned Uber, because my background image for this episode is actually from a recent tweet about the H3 index from Uber. So
it looks familiar. Yeah, it looks familiar.
Cool. Okay, so we're kind of, I guess, looking at you being a middleman, and this is sort of about my next question, I guess, is about sort of the business in a roundabout way. So what's the skin in the game of the owners and management, for example, yourself? Are you an owner?
Yeah. Owner, co-founder. Bill and I, started this and built a great team, around this. And, if the questions are on the business model, happy to get into that as well. But I think more importantly of skin in the game is, everyone in this company, experience the pain points at one time or another of how to acquire satellite data and imagery. And again, I'll focus most of the conversation on the satellite side, because that's what we have for an offering, but we've got the Bloom partners and drone partners and airplane partners coming. And I want to talk about the APIs and why the industry is so slow in this later. But in terms of skin in the game, we've seen the problems. I was in the military a long time ago. And seeing the pain points there of, I needed imagery, yet I had to go through this bureaucratic process of getting satellite data and imagery. Most of the company on the foundation of it, with Bill using it for his hedge fund of, trying to spend a lot of money and still having to talk to humans to get satellite imagery and data, where we live in a world now where I can buy a house online, I can buy a car online, I can get groceries delivered to my front door. You can find a date online using one of the various, apps, the League or Tinder or whatever you have. Yet I can't get a satellite image delivered to me without talking to a human. Like, the process is broken. So we have this skin in the game going, we need to solve this problem, because it's not just about satellite imagery. It's about, changing the world for the better. And a very interesting, aspect is, I think it's just a natural evolution of technology, where if we look at 100 years ago, people only knew what they read about in their small town newspaper or what they physically saw. Now we have the ability to see across the world almost instantaneously. And once I'm a believer in, once people see things, that drives action. If you just kind of hear about it and like maybe read about it, it's like, oh, but if you see things firsthand, that's when you drive action. So the skin in the game aspect of, yes, I also like the term, from Uber, the phrase is, the people on this team are owners, in the term of ownership into this model. We're not renters, meaning we're not just like, I'm just here for a short time. Like, we believe in this mission of changing the world, and that's what we're doing, this guy.
Okay, it sounds like a great team to be a part of. Yeah, I appreciate the leadership there. Okay, so how are you working backwards from customer needs? And I guess an important sort of bit of background for this question maybe continues the theme that others have said this is really hard. And I think that one of the main points from that Minds Behind Maps podcast was that the partners might not see the value in selling their data to a middleman. They might just want people to come directly to them. You know, in the end, the fee for the middleman won't be put on top of what they're offering. So in that context, especially to do with costs, how are you working backwards from customer needs?
Yeah, really good question. So when we started Skyfi, we're coming from a customer aspect of, we are solving our own pain points. But prior to launching our first product, the majority of 2022 was spent really in two areas. One, talking to customers, doing surveys, interviews. The phrase I like to use is like, we got out of the building, using this lean methodology of a startup, and talked to the customers across a wide variety. And technology, it makes it a lot easier. We can get those data points really fast. And we understood that people wanted diversity of selection. They wanted, to come to an app or, a product that you don't have to talk to a human. You just put in your credit card, go about your business and go. So that was one thing that we just kept on getting punched in the face on, is like, it has to be easy, has to be quick, has to be efficient. And then the other part of 22 was talking to partners, talking to, every satellite company you can imagine, and going, what we are doing is we're not necessarily the middleman. We are your customer touch point. We are solving for the customers, because here's what they're saying. And, another kind of analogy that comes up in the arena is, and I'll get to in a second, is if you're trying to build hardware and trying to operate a service and trying to do all the customer pain points, that's very difficult to do. In the aerospace world, it would be like Boeing trying to operate multiple airlines and providing a customer interface and solving for flight cancellations, where it's like, hey, Boeing, you know what? You build the airplanes. I'm Delta Airlines. I'll take care of all the customers and we'll operate. That's what we are doing. And it all comes down to, again, diversity of selection for the customers. But then when we talk to the satellite operators, the big thing is we're not cannibalizing their business. We're increasing the piece of the pie. We're broadening out the awareness and increasing the piece of the pie. They can still sell to their customers, their niche customers, all day long. We're bringing up about more additional revenue, because it's really advantageous to them, because it's all through APIs. It's a little bit of non-recoverable engineering, get the APIs done, which the industry is absolutely way behind at. It's an afterthought. For most companies we talk to, it's like, we'll put this amazing technology in space and then we'll figure out the API and customer side. I don't know how many times I've heard that. Anyone that tells me that, I'm like, you're about to get punched in the face with reality, where, trying to solve for an API. And I don't know how many times I've heard the phrase too, and we'll just hire a bunch of engineers to build it. I'm like, good luck. That is much harder said than done. But then having that customer touch point too, and understanding those pain points about delivering it. I think most companies are trying to boil the ocean. A lot of satellite companies call themselves tech companies. They're not. They're satellite companies, and they need to focus on just the best technology going into space for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, there's a few really nice things you said there. I love the image in my mind of you telling yourself going out of the building and actually, talking to customers, maybe visiting their offices, I don't know, shaking hands in the street, whatever. I like that more active approach. Another thing, I feel you said that it's a benefit, almost you coming from outside of geospatial, outside of the Earth observation industry. There's a theme here of your team and yourself being familiar with systems that work at scale, a global scale, Uber, for example. I can't help but feel that this is going to be a real boon. And I don't want to sound biased here, like I'm trying to flatter a podcast guest, but genuinely, I think people in the industry really feel and know that we need people who are familiar with systems at a global scale, We just need, our particular type of data put through those pipes, if you like. Okay, so
yeah.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind adding on to that, because I do think, timing is everything for startups. 10 years ago, could we do this? I don't think so, because, with the advent of the iPhone and connectivity across the world and data pipelines, they weren't robust enough. And then, the space industry itself was still, 99% government. Don't quote me on that percentage, but, thanks to the likes of Elon Musk and SpaceX, if you look at the inflection point for timing, over the last 10 years, there's roughly like 300 satellites launched a year. The next 10 years projected forward, there's about 1,700 being launched a year. So we're at this inflection point where it's cheaper to get to space, meaning there's more innovation, meaning there's more companies that can physically afford to create something and get to space. And then now it's about democratizing, that ability, but really, like we say, easifying the access to it. So I think we're at an incredible inflection point. Cell phones and web applications are much more cost effective to build, and we've learned these lessons how to reproduce technology to get to scale. And I think companies that have tried this in the past, they just haven't seen it. And the other thing too on that is a lot of companies that have tried this, and we're seeing it real time with a couple companies I won't name, is they tried to hire all the data scientists, all the engineers to build all the analytics, and you can never hire enough people. There's just way too many use cases to solve for it, and pretty soon your CapEx is so high, you just can't afford it. So that's why we take this partnership approach. We partner with the best, and then we provide that offering.
Yeah, and another really nice point you made. I love the airline analogy, and it reminds me of Google Flights or CheapOair, Priceline. You leave the aircraft manufacturers to manufacture the aircraft, the airlines even to run the flights, but then you have another level of aggregation on top to present it all in a single interface with a single account, a single payment card, and away you go. You've got a global audience happily consuming the service. So I'm beginning to understand, I think, the value you offer. So maybe then, as a metric of how well you are doing in working backward from customer needs, how fast is customer growth?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm very happy, and the whole team is happy. So when we launched on January 17th of this year, I thought it was going to be kind of slow. I thought it was going to take a lot of customer education, be like, here's the app, here's what it is. We had a big push starting last year with our social media presence, because that's another thing I think a lot of companies don't take advantage of this, essentially free advertising. Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter, one, it's fun, but two, you reach the masses very quickly. So when we launched on January 17th, we just saw this viral trend where, we went viral. We're in Hacker News trending for all the techies out there. That's a big thing to be, fed up on.
Hacker News is a very big endorsement. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're on there in the comments, and what was awesome is you just get, this brutal feedback right away, from the masses using like, I like this, and why is this? And you just have to be like, this is so valuable. You can't take it personal. So that was great. And then, quickly we reached 180 plus countries in the world where we had user sessions. And so that was great. And then we saw this thesis of people signing up for the app where, it started out to be, tens and then hundreds a day since this company was created. And that has continued where we have hundreds of people creating accounts a day going, okay, this is clearly something. So now we're at, 20,000 plus customers. Now, caveat is they're not all purchasing. Some of them are like, cool, this is awesome. They're purchasing maybe low volume, really cool, interesting pictures across the world as we start pivoting to more of the business use case. But we did that very strategically to go, let's test this market. Let's get a whole bunch of customer feedback, because what is needed is, what do people like? What don't they like? It wasn't about revenue, in these very early months that we're here. It's about like, let's refine this as fast as possible, get this decision-making cycle going, refine the app. We just had a big product release yesterday with some really good customer feedback that we implemented, and we're going to continue that cycle. So yeah, so we've had, hundreds of thousands of user sessions. tens and tens of thousands of accounts and purchases, thousands of images sold. And again, fairly narrow offering with electro-optical and SAR. And as new satellite technology, as our hyperspectral partners get up into space, that just adds more value, and that brings those customers that are just waiting for hyperspectral to come. And the same thing with balloons and airplanes and everything else. So yeah, phenomenal growth. Really excited with that, where we're at.
Sorry, I have to ask. I got a cheeky question. So, do you have any partnerships with Chinese balloon companies?
No Chinese balloon companies. No, we don't. But at that same time, we partner with people all over the world. Because there's a diversity of selection. It depends on where you are. Some people care about, is this a Chinese satellite or not? What we're finding that most of our companies or countries and customers don't care. They just want the data. And it's really easy to get down a path of frustration and anger over choices across the world. But our mission is, we're democratizing and easifying the access for this to the world. We've got partners all over the world, Argentina, Spain, like you name it, we'll partner, and our customers will decide, for what we're doing. So very comfortable with our approach so far. Again, because we love everyone in the world, and I think the mission that we talked about is this transparent view into Earth. Is if you can bring that transparent view into Earth, it brings people closer, and you really understand, who this person on the other side of the planet is by seeing their conditions and their everyone's just trying to make a living, get by, and live a great life.
You're absolutely right. It humanizes everyone. Yeah, and one thing I've always appreciated since I first studied remote sensing, I think it would have been 2009 at uni, was remote sensing images don't have borders.
Exactly. And that gets lost on people where, it's like, you just have to bridge the gap, and you realize we're all the same. We're all just trying to, to make a living and have a great life. And you can physically see it, across the world.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that we can talk about these more meaningful things too on this podcast and in the context of this industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you solved the problem that led to the creation of Skyfi? How fast can you return imagery for commodities traders? What's your coverage and periodicity?
Yeah, so we've got, there's really two big buckets of how to purchase satellite imagery, and balloons and drones all fit in the same bucket more or less. There's the historical or archive imagery, but what we call existing imagery, because most people don't understand archive or historical. So existing imagery, satellites fly overhead, they store in a database. We can pull from that, almost instantaneously from the time you place an order. It's an hour or two. We want to make sure the QC process is great. That'll get faster and faster. On the new image, or what the industry calls tasking ability, we call get a new image, because that's very self-explanatory to people. It really varies, but we've seen it within 24 hours. So now this is tasking a satellite, getting a new image by tasking a satellite through our app. Just drag and drop box, hit submit, hit pay, goes out to the Versal constellation and says, okay, Satellogics satellite is best served to solve Will's AAY. We've seen it, quicker than 24 hours, just depends on when you hit that queuing cycle, but 24 to 48 hours, depending on what type of sensor you want, is about average. Now we're seeing that is going to decrease, very much. Like, you have to enter the market. We're seeing, new technologies come, laser link communications, where the download is faster. And the more supply we have, and that's to one of the earlier points, the more sensors we have, the greater the offering and that faster delivery time comes. So it also depends on, like I said, the sensor type, where if it's SAR, like from one of our partners, Umbra, all weather, doesn't matter, you can get it. If it's electro-optical, if it's cloudy, if it's winter, like, you can't get your image. So you may have to wait a little while. So a large part of what we're doing is the customer education. For those folks unfamiliar, in the app and in our website and social, we have to, explain this, because again, everyone today in the world is used to like instantaneously. You can get the news instantaneously. You can get food delivered to your door almost instantaneously. So you have to match that expectation and do it. But yeah, that's what we're doing. On the commodity side, yeah, same thing. If you're looking at, coal piles or fracking crews or, ships and ports, up and down the Mississippi River, barge counts, car counts, it just really depends on all those factors, but faster is obviously better. And that's what we're solving for.
Okay. So in the context of trading, probably the most high profile remote sensing issue that was addressed or could be addressed by remote sensing would have been the Suez Canal blockage by that a large ship. So you said it's within 24 hours. So if I wanted to request via your app, I don't know, a square kilometer somewhere over the Suez Canal where there's a ship that's come aground, how much would it cost?
Yeah, so again, depends on the sensor type, but our minimum archive or existing image starts at about $20.
Wow.
So very cheap, because again, we negotiate with our partners. People want smaller scene sizes, and those will get smaller as we get some of our different partners on board. We get down to a square kilometer, because again, I'm a big believer, smaller is better, and you just buy more to get that unit price. And then on the requesting a new image by tasking a satellite, our SAR minimum order size is 16 square kilometers.
Yep.
And so that starts at a couple hundred. I think it's about $300. I'll have to look at Umbra's pricing for their lowest resolution. And then it gets just more expensive for the higher resolution, which they have 25 centimeter resolution for SAR, which I've ordered some, I ordered some drinking my Sunday morning coffee.
I remember you posted that on Twitter.
Yeah, about in East Africa, and I saw the image, and it's amazing. Again, you're going to pay for that, but Umbra's pricing is, significantly reduced from any other competitor out there, and Umbra is about to really change the game as they get more satellites up. But then on electro-optical, the minimum size is 25 square kilometers,
yep.
And that price starts at $175.
Okay, so that's really cheap. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, I've been in GIS since I guess 2010. For me, I think we purchased I worked on the Bergen oil field, the largest oil field in Kuwait, 2013 to 2017. We purchased Worldview 2 imagery, I think. I recall it was about $6,000 US. And then it was another thousands of extra dollars to auto-rectify the damn imagery, which they didn't do. So I had to do it by hand using SRTM data, which was fun. Okay, so hundreds of dollars. Wow.
Yeah.
I have to ask, I've got another cheeky question. So given that you've mentioned Umbra, is there an extra fee we can pay for an autograph from Joe Morrison on the Umbra SAR?
I will. Joe lives just down the street from me in Austin here. I see him all the time. I can make that happen. I'm sure.
Right.
Joe's a good buddy. Excellent on Twitter. We're grabbing dinner tonight, actually, for this space dinner meetup. So I'll mention that. But on the economics too, Gabe, the president of Umbra, likes to say the phrase unit. It's all about unit economics, and it really is. And what related to that, what we're changing the industry is, we're selling smaller scene sizes. We're helping grow the pie for our partner network. But we don't do contracts. We can do contracts for payment if it makes it easier for companies, if they don't want the burden of paying each time. If you want to be like, hey, I want to spend $20K a month, we're like, cool, we'll make it easy. You don't have to. But historically, what we've seen from the industry is the sales cycle goes with how much do you want to buy a year? So sign up for $150K a year. And then when you buy images within that bucket, it's 100 square kilometers or very massive scene sizes. So of course it's going to be more expensive, where the oil field in Kuwait you worked at, you probably needed a fraction of that. But yet that was their business model. That's what they sold you. So we're changing that, because it's like the analogy back to Uber. If it was like, I was like, hey, Will, you can use Uber, but you have to pay $100,000 a year, and every trip you take is going to be on a semi. Where you're like, no, I want to ride in a Toyota Prius and pay as I go. So that's the big difference for what we're doing.
Yeah, another great analogy. Yeah, appreciate that. Okay, so it seems the stock market is suspicious about your niche, I'm sorry to say. There's a bloodbath in EO stocks. So what's the signal that customers are sending here?
I think there's a bloodbath in all of the stocks, over the last couple of years, especially the SPACs. If you look across, the space industry, the finance industry, the aerospace industry, everyone that did a SPAC, there was a reckoning where prices were inflated, valuations were inflated, companies went to public status way too early before they even had real products out there. I'm very familiar with, a lot of the aerospace companies where they're barely flying prototype aircraft, yet you're a public company. Now, some of that is, kudos to the investors that were able to get that cash to continue the development. But I think we're seeing the same parallels in the satellite industry, where there are very, very good public satellite companies that were just guilty by association. But then there's some that were just no business model that made sense, jumping on, the SPAC bandwagon. And now we're seeing that reckoning. And some of them are going to be delisted. You can see that in the prices today. Yeah, it's starting, and rightfully so. So there's this correction coming, and there's a lot of ways to spin it, but I don't think it's a signal of the Earth observation industry. It's just the markets globally, overall. So I am not worried about it. The good companies will still prevail. Yes, there may be some short-term pain, but then again, you look at a company like Maxar, who was just acquired, and they did phenomenal. If you build phenomenal products, people want to use them, and you just have to weather a little bit of the storm of guilty by association. But I still remember I was in the venture world just for a little bit, and prior to starting Skyfi, and hearing a drone company in the Bay Area that had just better than a hobby grade drone that was barely flying, saying, yeah, in 6 months we're going to SPAC. And I was like, you guys are crazy. There's no way to do it. And of course they didn't. And it was just like this mindset of like, well, then we'll just go public. It's like, there's a lot more to it. It's a mystery, for a lot of folks on why that occurred. But again, I don't think it's a signal at all on the Earth observation market.
Yeah, well, I guess you've said that Skyfi themselves have gone from January to now May, and now have 20,000 accounts. So you must be doing something right. And I also liked the phrase there, guilty by association, or another one is, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I can't help but think, from an investor's perspective who wasn't tempted during the SPAC boom, and now that all of them seem on average to be down about 80%. Sidus went from an IPO, so they weren't a SPAC. They IPO'd at $27. They're now less than $1. I can't help but feel now's the time to get serious, get some experts together, figure out which ones are actual babies, which ones are bathwater, and make some intelligent investment decisions.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's definitely, across the board for global markets. Again, I'm not coming from a position of expertise on market analysis or anything, but I think we're just seeing more realistic valuations. We're Skyfi, we're just completing our second fundraise and seeing the diligence required, where investors are asking the hard questions that they should have been asking over the last 3 years. And now it's just back to that cycle of like, cool, you do have to have a product, you do have to provide value, you can't rely on hype. And that'll really get you through. And then the same thing with, working. I think we're seeing that with, this remote work push where, it's very difficult to do that and run a very successful company, where we take a hybrid approach at Skyfi. We have people all over the world because I really embrace that. But yeah, just the realistic expectations, with the tech layoffs that have come from the big tech companies, who are laying off tens of thousands of people, the days of going to work for Google and making, $400,000 or $500,000 base salary as a mid-grade engineer are done. Because that's just not realistic and not what the market will support anymore. So it's definitely an interesting time, but I think amazing companies, if you look back at the '08 housing crash, where we're at now, and those companies that were built out of those tough times are amazing companies because they figured out the value, they figured out how to build right and hard. And I think we're in that same boat. But then very candidly too, we've got a lot of customers, but again, it's repeat revenue, repeat purchases, providing that value. I would love to say every one of our thousands of customers are spending thousands and thousands of dollars. They're not yet. We have to prove out our business model for it.
Yep. Okay, I think that leads us nicely into the next question, and I'm trying to find a way to begin to hear more about the recent release that you tweeted about. So the next question is this one. So is Will Cadell, CEO of Spark Geo, right that pixels from EO companies aren't what customers want? For example, how good is the average soybean futures trader at NDVI analysis? Is he right that the way to win is analytics? If so, what is Skyfi doing here?
The answer is yes and no. Because again, I think it's very interesting. Some people like the imagery. There's a lot of beauty in that. There's a lot of questions you can just get answered from looking at pure imagery. But I guess I'm 80% yes. Analytics, or really asking questions of the data that comes from Earth observation, is the answer. I think it's inevitable that what we do at Skyfi and some other companies will try to do as well is become this Google search of the Earth, or more modern day, the buzz is Chat GPT of the Earth.
Sure.
I have a question, I want an answer, and behind the scenes, it's the analytics that get done on top of the imagery to present that answer. I mean, that is where I think inevitably will go. But again, I think most people don't and shouldn't care about the pixels for it. I think it's all about the answers, for the vast majority of our customers. And it's really interesting because I think, you see some of the satellite companies, I guess the point is imagery is going to be a commodity very soon. Pretty soon, and almost right now, you're going to have a plot of Earth with 10 different sensor options stacked above it, and you're going to go to the one that answers your question the fastest for the cheapest. And that's where we're going to go. And, again, it's that question of it. So, every operator, rightfully so, thinks their image is better than the partner or competitor, but that's not the case. So I think it does get down to, average soybean, futures trading price. If you can start answering that. And again, we have a pretty core trading background for most of Skyfi, especially with Bill Perkins. And so I think we're pretty uniquely positioned to be, the leader there.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get at, and again, I haven't really done much to do with remote sensing or Earth observation in my career, but I do remember the normalized difference vegetation index as a way using near infrared values from the infrared spectrum to detect the health of chlorophyll action, basically, or leaves. And a soybean trader or any kind of, I guess, crop trader might be interested in the health of crops. I guess that's, and I suppose there would be a whole bunch of analytics that they might want to use.
And I think, more appropriately, like, what is Skyfi doing here? That is with our partnership approach. Where we have a ton of analytic partners, and we are working feverishly to present the answers they can provide in a user format, a user interface, and a user experience that feels magical. Because right now, what we could do is go, cool, thank you, customer, you purchased image via Satellogic or Umbra or whoever. Now go talk to one of our analytic partners and get your question solved. That's not what we're doing. We want to have it all presented for that customer. And so what we're doing on the back end is the API integration with the partners to provide that solution very quickly. And in the next coming weeks and months, we're going to start releasing some of our early versions, similar to what we did in January this year. Like, push it out to the market. Let's get customer feedback. People like it. Okay, quickly iterate and push that out. So yeah, the analytics. I mean, people can go to skyfi.com and look at our partner list. We've got a robust partner list, but what we won't do is release something that feels clunky and is not magical. That is the word that we use here for that. So you'll see that soon.
Okay. All right. So AI is all the rage. I'm starting to feel it's well and truly, well, it's towards the top of the hype cycle, surely. But deep learning and algorithmic analysis of matrix data sets are not new to Earth observation. So does anyone at Skyfi think that the AI mania will be pivotal for the geospatial industry, like when the transistor was invented in 1958, leading to, CPUs?
Yeah, really good question. Multiple thoughts on AI. One, I think there should be a healthy skepticism on AI as we release it broadly. Obviously, OpenAI with ChatGPT and what the future of AI looks like is, depending on your viewpoint, could be very scary, very beneficial. There is just so much on the unknown. I think any company today that is counting on AI to solve their product market fit problems is going to be in for a rude awakening. I think they're kind of waving a magic wand and like, oh yeah, we'll integrate AI. I've heard Earth observation companies doing that, startups doing that. I think you have to take just a very deliberate look at how to get it to solve the customer pain point. It's something we're looking at, and I think it'll be inevitable. Most companies will use some form of AI, just like every company almost in the world uses, R, Python, or, some sort of coding language. Back in the day, people I don't think they were skeptical of it, but it just took a while to adapt. So I think, yeah, it's inevitable, but you have to be very deliberate on, is it actually solving a problem, or are you just trying to say that so some investor will give you money and be like, and we're doing AI because it's a buzzword. So I think there's a lot to be said there. But I do think you framed it correctly, like AI mania right now. I think there's a whole host of Y Combinator companies, almost all of them are using AI. Their pitches, and I think most of them probably don't even know how to actually actualize it yet.
Yeah, I wonder how many of them know what GPT even means. I think I found out a couple of days ago. I've already forgotten. So,
yeah, same here. Yeah.
I think I'm actually looking for a company that says AI doesn't matter at all. I think that would make me respect them at the moment. Yeah, right. Okay, so maybe I can try to sum up a bit. So I guess one thing that really stood out for me when I came across Skyfi initially was actually the almost cinematic experience just using your website. For example, it's a nice little white dot that your mouse transforms into when you move around on the website. So that shows me, that you're a team that cares about the user and wants to present things in a pleasing way. I understand from what you've said that you've partnered with a number of satellite companies, including synthetic aperture radar, but also in the visual spectrum, to provide historical or existing imagery, and also sometimes for just hundreds of dollars within 24 hours, you have a tasking system to deliver new imagery. You've mentioned that you have an ambition at least to start to enter the analytics market. It sounds like, like everyone, you have some awareness of AI. You've also said that there were some new product releases for Skyfi. So in that context, in the context of that summary, how are you extending what Skyfi is?
Yeah. So, very clear on the customer feedback. Higher resolution is a very, clear pain point that people want solved. So we, have very high resolution now for electro-optical, and then super high resolution for SAR via Umbra. We've announced the ability
what does super high resolution mean actually in terms of?
25 centimeters,
Okay,
25 centimeters for Umbra. And then we also found, people want, on the easification side, when they have an area of interest, to save it and just come back to it. So we have a save AOI feature. And then, we're just continuing to iterate more where, people also wanted to select different companies. Like, hey, I only want Satellogics sensors. So you can select under more advanced features, because I think there's still a healthy thesis, like people shouldn't necessarily care about where the imaging comes from. But again, if they want it, great, you can get into advanced features, select Satellogic or select Umbra, and that's what your options will have for you. So with those 4 big things, very high resolution, super high with SAR, save your AOI, and then provider selection were just a few of the things we announced yesterday. And you're going to see this trend continue with, just more rapid feature updates and product expansion.
I like the idea of a AOI that you can revisit, because that, I guess, takes us back to, for example, that ship that ran aground in the Suez Canal. Maybe a journalist might want to see the updates from all the sensors available on your platform within that AOI as they work to get the ship afloat again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. So final question then. In the UK, it's possible to undertake a geospatial apprenticeship. So what qualities, skills, or ambitions should an apprentice have to do well at Skyfi?
Yeah, so we take folks of all kinds, for interns. We've got a whole host of summer interns coming, and they span the gamut of venture capital experience, military experience, some geospatial experience. So really, what we interview for is people that can solve problems and don't have a hesitation to jump in and ask the questions and really prove it out, because we're all learning here. So we don't, we'll definitely take geospatial experts, but for the large part rely on our aerospace satellite company partners, analytic partners to answer that. But all types. If you're motivated, you love working, like we'll definitely take you on board for the internship or apprenticeship for you.
Sure. So is there anything that stands out in terms of the technology stack that would, if somebody had that skill, like, I don't know, JavaScript, for example, there would be a yes, as opposed to someone who didn't?
Yeah, I mean, on the engineering side, I mean, we use a whole host of platforms for coding. I mean, more diverse the better, because again, everything is complex and complicated and tied together. There's no specifics. On the business development and partnership side, just again, wide variety of skills. Good interpersonal skills, talking to people. But on the tech stack, I don't want to narrow it down, because we've hired people from across every sort of engineering background and done well. It's more about the motivation.
Yeah, and that's a really great message. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was it from me. Did you have any other things you want to say about Skyfi? Otherwise, really appreciate you coming on.
No, I think we covered it all. Yeah, just really, kudos to you and the platform here, and really excited, because again, the more of this, the better, as we get all of this out to the public, because there's still a lack of awareness. People don't know about this amazing technology we're flying overhead and how to use them every day. That's it takes a whole host of people, not just one company or 2 companies, to do it. So I really appreciate coming on. It was great. It was fun.
Sorry, I have to say this. There was another thing that sprang to mind when you were describing, I guess, all the partners. It sounds like network effects might be a part of your business here. It's like the more platforms you have on, the more customers are going to find that one of their questions is answered.
Exactly, 100%. I'm a huge fan of network effects. It's like if you're going to Uber and you only had, Ford F-150 trucks available, no one really uses it, because you're like, I don't really need that. Same thing with us. More the better. People hear about it. That continues a snowball effect. More partners come to us, more customers. So it's definitely network effects in this marketplace approach.
Great. If I can again try to maybe sum up it, because what I've been the platform I'm familiar with before I found out about Skyfi that works in the same area is Earth Explorer from USGS, a really clunky web-based system. But what you guys are is an example of the commercial approach to this problem. can produce something that's much more engaging and useful. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Luke.
All right, thanks. We'll see ya.